How's everybody doing today? I wanted to take just a minute to chat about a new tool that I got here in the shop back. My family got it for me for Father's Day, which was really cool. But I want to take just a minute to explain why I wanted this particular tool, some of the differences between these two saws, and why I chose the saw that I did, why I wanted the saw that I did. First of all, we'll talk about it a little bit. This saw on my left here is an abrasive cutoff saw, more commonly referred to as a chop saw. They work very well for what they're intended for. They'll cut metal. This is a unit that I picked up from Harbor Freight. I probably had it, good Lord, 15 years maybe. I've used it for a ton of projects over the years. It has worked for a Harbor Freight tool. It's worked great, as good as can be expected for an abrasive cutoff saw. This tool on the right is an Evolution carbide blade circular saw. Evolution makes several different models of this. They make one that you can find at most big box stores, Lowe's, Home Depot, those kind of places. This unit, however, is their more industrial version. It considerably more expensive. Not that matters. That's why I didn't say it a minute ago. I'm not going to do a head-to-head comparison on these. They're different as night and day. What I want to more talk about is just the differences in how they operate, and if you're looking for a quality saw, why I would recommend probably looking at something more along the lines of the Evolution. Let me grab the camera, bring you over here, and just kind of show you some of the differences between these two saws, in case people aren't familiar with what an abrasive cutoff saw is and that sort of thing. So this abrasive cutoff saw uses a cutoff wheel disc, very similar to what you would use in a 4-inch angle grinder, a cutoff wheel in a die grinder, something along those lines. It's a relatively, you see, it's a relatively thin blade, spins at a very high RPM, and essentially grinds its way through a cut. There are some downsides to that, and we'll talk about those in a minute. But this saw leaves this, you can see this kind of powdery dust, and if you use them a lot, it gets everywhere. Conversely, on the Evolution saw, uses a carbide blade, and this saw actually cuts the metal. It doesn't just grind it away. You can see here in the convenient little catch tray that Evolution puts on their saws, that's metal shavings, not dust. That is just metal. But those that's kind of the difference in how they cut. The Evolution cuts at a much slower RPM. Like I said, the abrasive cutoff saw, those spin at a very high RPM. They create a lot of sparks, and a lot of dust. Put you back in the stand here. Like I said, this isn't going to be a head-to-head comparison, so to speak, of these two saws. Just why I chose the Evolution saw. For those that aren't too familiar with these type of tools, one of the major drawbacks with a abrasive cutoff saw is trueness in cut. They're not designed to be accurate. They are designed to be a chop saw. Do rough cuts, get stuff rough measurements. That's why you see them a lot of job sites where they're cutting rebar and things along those lines. What ends up happening is when you're cutting a thick piece of whatever, be it square tubing or angle iron or whatever it is, the abrasive blade tends to want to walk away from the arbor or walk away from the center of the blade. In other words, it starts straight, but as it cuts, it wants to start cutting at an angle. That is probably the biggest drawback to an abrasive cutoff saw. If you're trying to do accurate cuts, build stuff, get metal to fit together so you can weld it, that sort of thing, the abrasive cutoff saw can prove to be very difficult in that aspect. On the other hand, with something like the Evolution saw with the solid steel blade, it eliminates that walk. Another drawback to the abrasive cutoff saw is it leaves a burr on the end of the cut. And I'll scrounge up some square tubing or something here in a minute and kind of show you that. The carbide tooth, it leaves a small burr, but it's nothing compared to the abrasive cutoff wheel. And again, it is merely because the abrasive cutoff wheel is grinding through the material instead of actually cutting it. Show you here real quick. Pardon me. How I had mentioned this saw leaves a bit of a burr when you cut. Cover your ears. Noisy. You can see that burr right there. Let's try it in the other saw and see how it does. This thing's kind of making a little bit of a liar out of me today, but we'll try it in the other saw and see what we get there. Oh, gotta plug it in first. That would help, wouldn't it? you can see with the carbide saw, almost no burr. You may have also, pardon me, may have also noticed while I was cutting that you know, the amount of sparks that are thrown off by the abrasive cutoff saw. Although the carbide saw also does create some sparks, it's not nearly like the abrasive saw. Talking about some of the versatility of this saw over the abrasive cutoff saw, you know, we've already discussed quality of cut and that sort of thing. This saw will cut anything. You can use it to cut wood, you can use it to cut aluminum, you can use it to cut brass, steel, of course. The abrasive cutoff saw, you're cutting steel, and that's about it. You can hack your way through aluminum, but you're going to gall that disc up and just trash it. The carbide tooth saw, you do have to use some cutting wax to keep it cleaned up, keep the aluminum from galling it up and that kind of thing, but it is possible to do. Those are just some of the bonuses to something more like this saw. If you're looking at working with more than just steel, definitely something to consider. I'm a firm believer in purchasing the best tool that you can afford to do the job. And like I said a few minutes ago, I have had this abrasive cutoff saw from Harbor Freight. I've had it for years. It has worked flawlessly. It's done a great job. I've built many projects. It has cut an exorbitant amount of steel. I actually figured that it would have worn out ages ago, but it just keeps chugging along, just keeps doing the job. However, as time went along, I've gotten to the point where I wanted a saw that would do more accurate cuts, and that is where I started looking at something more like the carbide tooth saw. I've had a few people point out or ask, why didn't you just get a bandsaw? For many reasons. I will not deny that a bandsaw for straight cuts and for precise cuts and ease of use and they're quiet, they're phenomenal. And to be honest, I probably could have picked up a decent bandsaw for a comparable price to what I paid for this Evolution saw. That being said, one of my deciding factors, and you'll hear me talk about this throughout a lot of the videos that I do, I have limited shop space. And so everything I do, all the tools I do, you know, how I try to organize things, or the tools that I want rather than the tools that I have and that kind of stuff, I have to stay very cognizant of the size of tools and how much room they're going to take up and that sort of thing. And I would love to have a bandsaw if I had room to put it. I simply don't feel that I do. And there was other options for a quality cutting machine that would get me very close to the same quality as a bandsaw, and that is this Evolution saw. I keep referring to this Evolution saw because it's what I have. There are several manufacturers. I believe Makita makes one. I believe DeWalt makes a similar model. I can't speak for any of those. After reading a ton of reviews and that sort of thing, the Evolution just kind of seemed to rank at the top, right in the same price range with everything else. It just seemed to be a very quality tool. again, not doing a head-to-head comparison, but for instance, the Evolution, this whole base is all cast. The blade guard cast. The motor housing cast. Where something like this is all tin, plastic motor housing. You know, again, this is a Harbor Freight unit. There are many other manufacturers that manufacture these, and I'm sure they're far superior to this particular tool. That being said, none of them are going to do away with the, like I said, with the walk of the cut, the cutting burrs and that kind of stuff. That's just the nature of an abrasive cutoff saw. Trying to think if there's anything else that I want to get into in this video. I'm sure that if you keep up with the videos that I do here in the Toyota Trucks and Trails shop, that you're going to see this Evolution saw used quite frequently. That's not to say if I'm doing some rough cut stuff and I really don't care what the length of it is, that I won't take this Harbor Freight unit back out at some point and put it back into service for brief periods of time. But with that, I guess I'll just kind of wrap things up. I'm not saying that if the best that you can afford is a abrasive cutoff saw, that's a bad thing. Like I said, I've used this one a ton. I've done a ton of projects with it. They will get the job done, and if you're very careful, you can mitigate some of the downsides to it. Not all of them, but some of them, and you know, slow your cut pressure down, or lessen your cut pressure rather, and that sort of thing. That all helps, but it doesn't definitely doesn't fix the problem. But if this is the best you can do, the best you can afford, by all means, it's going to cut steel for you. It's going to do a great job. Like with most other things in life, you get what you pay for it. If you want quality cuts, and you know, and if you're cutting angles and doing projects where you're cutting angles and expecting to weld them and have angles match up and that kind of stuff, and don't want to have to do a lot of adjusting after the cut, so to speak, something along the lines of a carbide saw, carbide tooth saw, like the Evolution is probably going to be more in your ballpark. Kind of rambling here a little bit, so I'll wrap it up. Like I said, I'm sure y'all will be seeing this saw a lot in the future. I've got a lot of projects coming up that are going to be involving welding and building different things and that kind of stuff. So I hope you check that out. As always, don't forget, if you enjoy this kind of content, fab work, fabrication work, some automotive work and that kind of stuff, especially on Toyotas and Toyota trucks, if you enjoy off-roading and that kind of stuff, be sure and check out the podcast that this YouTube channel is associated with, Toyota Trucks and Trails, at Toyota Trucks and Trails. Got busy there. We're available on iTunes and it's not iTunes anymore. Apple Podcast app, the Google Podcast app, Spotify, just about anywhere you can find a podcast, you can find Toyota Trucks and Trails. Look us up.